first know you wanted to be a mom?
For me, it wasn't like a specific time or date or place or an event that happened in my life. I just always wanted to be a mom. Like I thought, if life went according to my plan, which it really does, that I was going to grow up, get married, and have kids. I loved playing dolls. I loved playing Barbies. I was an older sister. I was a nanny. I babysat all the time. Like I loved kids, and I was just always going to have kids. Like it was never even a question. I was going to have 4 or 5 for sure.
Oh
Why
my
not?
Gosh. When did you and your partner get started trying, and like what was like the beginning of your like romance?
Well, we were set up on a blind date by my cousin.
Oh.
And then for Oklahoma standards, I feel like especially, and just like, my parents were high school sweethearts, his parents were college sweethearts. We had both never been married or had kids, but we met kind of later in life. I mean, like I was 31 when I met him and he was 40. And so they say when you know, you know. And, once again, according to my plans, I thought I'd be married much before that, but I was waiting on the right guy, and it was perfect in God's timing. And so when we knew that, we were who God had for each other, then we got engaged after 9 months, got married after 13 months of being together. And so then we also, especially a female, I feel like thinks about her biological clock is ticking. So we both had talked about leading up to getting married that we would start trying right away. So not for TMI, but on our honeymoon, I did throw away my birth control, even did that old legs over the head trick and think I thought, because I didn't know any different at the time, that when we got home that I would probably be pregnant. I was like, oh, but that was it. Like, I'm totally going to be pregnant. And honestly, everybody that I knew, when they started trying, they got pregnant. I had one friend that she had mentioned something about like an IUI. I didn't really know what it was, because until you go through it or talk to somebody, in depth about it, it just kind of was over my head. And so sisters, sister-in-laws, all of my friends, when they started trying to have a baby, they got pregnant. So I just assumed it would be the same.
Walk us through what happened next. So you started trying, and then, when did you kind of decide, okay, maybe we need some like intervention or help getting pregnant?
So we started trying in technically September of 2015. And then by the beginning or spring of 2016, once again, worried about time and, my biological clock and what do we, is everything okay? How long could this take? Because it was already at that point taking longer than I thought. Little did I know, but we went to the doctor, just my OBGYN, and he looked and he found some cysts. And so he thought, okay, we're going to go in and remove these cysts and then should be good to go. And so they did that surgery, I think, in the fall of 2016. And when they went in, there was more than they thought, and they ended up doing a DNC and cleaned everything out, cleaned my tubes out. And then they really said, once you're healed, you need to, take some time to heal, but then you'll be pregnant right away, because like now you're going to be good. So then I kind of felt at peace, because it was kind of nice that it took the pressure off. Like, okay, we get a little bit of time, because I'm probably not going to get pregnant till we have the surgery, and then my body needs a little bit of time to heal after the surgery. So that took that like pressure of trying off. But then it was like when the time rolled around that I should be pregnant again, and then it still didn't happen, then, there was more questions. And so then I started taking, I believe, one of the fertility drugs that can kind of just help you get pregnant. And then, there's a chance it could be multiples. Tried that for a little bit and it didn't work. And then started talking to an infertility specialist doctor. And at that point, we started trying IUIs. And so we actually, and I had met a girl at that time that became one of my good friends, and we were going to the same doctor and on the same schedule. And we both did one round of IUI and didn't get pregnant. And then on the second one, we both got pregnant, and at the exact same time, but then I had a miscarriage at, I think it was technically considered 6 weeks, because it's how they count back to your cycle and everything. And it was devastating, because at this time, I think that was, probably almost 2 years into trying. So you kind of can't help but feel like you've wasted 2 years and you're just getting older. And the chances are probably getting, if you look at statistics, smaller of you being able to conceive. So they call that a chemical pregnancy when, you're not that far along, and it was a positive test, but then, never actually turned into a pregnancy. And so after that, we proceeded to do, I think, 7 or 8 or 9 IUIs total, even trying, because my friend swore by the fact that she got pregnant off of doing a double IUI, like one day and one the next day, because she was like, I'm not sure they know exactly when you're going to ovulate, so maybe that'll help. So we even did a couple of those, which is also kind of double the money because you're paying for 2. So we did that, didn't work, didn't get pregnant at all. And so then we started thinking, okay, well, all of our eggs in one basket, we're going to do IVF. That's going to work. Like, that works for everybody that I know that's tried it, right? So we had to get on, the list, and you have to go to a class and go to these meetings. And I mean, I didn't, a funny story.
Like? I don't know.
Well, a funny story that I didn't know anything about it. And so your husband has to go give a sample, I think is what it's called. And I just, now looking back, it's so funny, but at the time I didn't even think about it. I thought I was supposed to go with him. Like, we went together to all the appointments. We were really close through it. It was so great that he was so supportive. So I was going to go with him to his appointment. Well, it just so happened that his appointment fell on Halloween. And I was dressed as a black cat in all leather. And I went to the fertility clinic. Because I always dress up all day, every day for Halloween, like on Halloween. Like, it's not all day, every day, but all that whole day. So I just wore it, not even thinking, like, oh, everybody's going to be dressed up. It's Halloween. Nobody else was dressed up. Nobody else's wives were with them. And then I didn't know if I was supposed to go in the room with them or not. So I did. And then he got frustrated. He said it was awkward. So he kicked me out. So here I am, like, dressed as this cat, awkwardly, like, kicked out of the room. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this looks so weird. Like, why am I wearing this here? Like, it finally dawned on me. I'm like, this looks like I did this to, like, try to be sexy or something. And that wasn't even it. But so that was part of, the whole process. You need that for, I think they maybe tested it for IUIs, but then for sure for IVF. And everything with him was great. Like, guys' age usually doesn't matter, but sometimes they can have their morphology or something like that can be different. But his was like perfect, almost off the charts, which was great. And I was so happy and thankful for, but it can also make you feel like, oh gosh, this is all me. And so then it's more pressure, which is probably the last thing you need at that point. And so we got on the IVF, kind of waiting list and got our classes done. You had to go to like educational classes, and there's probably about 5 couples in it total. And then started that process, and they were able to get 12 eggs from me, which I was like, well, that's great, because I was told, that may not happen, and they didn't know about the quality. And then 4 of them fertilized, and we opted to send them off for genetic testing, because to me, that was like an insurance policy. It's like, everything we've been through already, I would like to know if it even has a chance, because why go through the transfer, just in my opinion and what I felt comfortable with, if it doesn't even have a chance at making it? Like, why put my body through that? Why put our hearts through that? All of that. So we opted to do that, and unfortunately, none of them were healthy. So we had done all of that, and we didn't have a single one. And so that was devastating. And then after that, I think we just kind of needed a break, because at this point, it's been like 2.5 years. We're, actually maybe even closer to 3. And we're tired, both emotionally, physically. My body, I had scars all over my stomach from my surgery, that my insides had literally been scraped out. Like, there's just physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, we're like, let's take a break. And so during that break, we actually got pregnant naturally. And so sometimes I think that can have a little bit to do with all of the hormones and stuff or the drugs that you've pumped your body with, and then you're more relaxed, because I think that happens sometimes. So I tell people now, I'm like, don't give up hope if it doesn't work, because sometimes it happens after. And I know other people that it has happened to.
Well, you always hear those stories of families that adopt and then get pregnant.
Yes, it's like something, I swear stress has a lot lot to do with it.
Yes.
And so don't get stressed out during the process. Easier said than done. So I was kind of trying to be at peace and put on a brave face with the fact that we were just going to hold off for a while. And I was at home doing my devotional like I always did in the morning. And I was like, God, like I need a sign. Like I need something that tells me like, you know, this is on my heart to be pregnant, like that it's going to happen. Like I get that it's going to be in your timing. I get that at this point, but like I just need a little bit of hope. And so I was reading Luke 1, and I think I was like, I don't remember exactly where I started, but it's about when Mary finds out she's pregnant with Jesus. And I was like, okay, God, like I appreciate like the pregnancy thing. Like, okay, that makes me feel a little better, but I mean, I really don't think I'm like Mary, but you know, I was like trying to, you know, just grasp on any hope. But then I remembered somebody telling me too, like lots of times we can read scripture and just take what we want from them and not necessarily dive deeper. And so something said, just keep reading. And so when I was reading, then it talks about where she goes to her cousin Elizabeth's house. And Elizabeth, though thought to be barren and in her old age, was actually in her 6th month. And I just started bawling. I was like, God, I'm Elizabeth. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was 6 weeks pregnant. And so I felt like he told me kind of that through that. And so we were pregnant naturally. And I was, of course, still just trying to faith walk every day. But I was terrified because I was like, we've done all this and then now it just happened naturally. In a way, it felt too good to be true, but I was just trying to, you know, not worry and stay calm. And every doctor's appointment, everything was perfectly healthy, perfectly normal, like perfectly healthy. We found out it was a baby boy. My sister actually owns a 4D ultrasound baby boutique, and I would go up there, you know, every other day and check on him. And we were just all, I had to, that's kind of the sad thing. So I forget what age it's past. If it's past, I don't think it's even 35. I think it's younger than that. They consider it a geriatric pregnancy. I'm like,
Yeah.
Can we not like think of a little bit of a nicer name? That's kind of offensive. Like,
Totally.
and so I'm like, and isn't that still pretty young? And so I got to go to a specialist, which I was also like, great. Like, give me all I want all the eyes on him. I want to make sure we're doing everything right. Like, that's fine. So I was not offended by that, just the name, but happy to go to as many appointments. And everything was perfect the whole way, everything. And I was 29 weeks, had a great normal day. My sister had just had my youngest sister had just had a little boy who was, you know, my son, going to be my son's best friend, 4 days before at that point. So she had a 4-day-old little boy. So I picked up my niece that day from school, and this is on March 5th, 2019. And I felt like my back hurt a little bit, but I also kind of had a small frame, and everybody was like, oh, this is going to be a really big baby. So I just thought, and people thought like I was about to go into labor, even though I was only 29 weeks. So I was showing a lot. And I probably would have just laid down for the night. But my parents were downtown and they're like, we want to come see how the nursery's going. And so I got out of bed and showed them. And then we were supposed to go to a friend's birthday party, just a dinner right down the street. And so I was like, since I'm up, I'll go do that. Well, at the dinner, my back just started killing me, like excruciating pain. And I have a very high pain threshold, and we've especially come to find out. But it was so painful. And I kept thinking, you know, babies can press on your bladders. I kept thinking, I need to go to the bathroom. And I would go in there and like nothing would come out. I couldn't even pee, like nothing. And I got up and went several times, and then I just felt horrible. And we tried to go to a place with everybody after, and I was like, babe, I really don't feel good. And so we tried to go home, which our house was just like 2 blocks away or 4. And I couldn't even make it up the stairs. I was in so much pain. I couldn't even lay on the couch. So we called my sister, his sister-in-law who had been a nurse, my sister who was and I don't think I mentioned she's a NICU nurse as well. And so everybody said, just after everything you've been through, I'm sure it's fine, but just go to triage and just get checked out. We get there. At this point, I can't even sit down in the car. I'm like laying, kind of laying at an angle, and I'm in so much pain, can barely make it up to where we check in. And of course, they want you to fill out all the paperwork and do all of that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just want to know that my baby's okay. Something is wrong. Please just I can do this later. Just put an ultrasound on him. What can we please just check? And so filled it out as fast as I could. And they finally took me in there and they're like, he's fine. Like, there's his heartbeat. We'll order an ultrasound just in case. They called my doctor, went over everything was fine, but I knew something was wrong. And I'm not like super dramatic, and I wasn't like screaming and throwing a fit, but it was the worst pain I had ever felt. So they're like, we're gonna keep you overnight just to monitor you. And my husband went home to grab some stuff. His mom had come up there and left, and then my mom was up there with me while he ran home. And from the time he parked his car in the parking lot to when he got back up to the room, they had lost the heartbeat on our son Zeke, and they tried to find it. They don't just, cut you open immediately. So they were trying to find it because sometimes there can be a malfunction with the machine, or he might have moved or something. And I'm kind of like in and out at that point. I think they had given me some stuff to make me more comfortable. And then they asked me to get up and turn on all fours to try to find him. And they weren't having any luck. So they said, okay, we're going to do a C-section. And they started I think they threw some stuff to my husband to put on. My mom said, what's going on? And so she calls everybody else in the family, and they just rushed me back. And they've said, thank God that I was at the hospital, because I could have possibly died too, because you can bleed out. Because what happened was my uterus had ruptured, and that's what was causing all the pain, but they couldn't see it on the ultrasounds. I think there was like only one way they could see it, and I don't remember if it was like an MRI or something, which they would have done next, but then it happened before that. And I don't want to scare people. I think statistically is like 1 in 1,000. It is rare, but, and they were doing everything, and my doctor was involved. It's just rare. And then my placenta was actually on the front of where I was carrying him. And so when my uterus ruptured at the back and Zeke fell into my back, it also caused my placenta to abrupt because it pulled on it. So then, their emergency C-section, cutting me open, and I'm still, now I'm like awake because I'm terrified. And I feel like I could feel everything. I knew exactly what was going on. I was like, okay, so we're having him now. And I thought, with my sister being a NICU nurse, I knew sometimes that babies went into the NICU at like 24 weeks. So I still am thinking God gave us this miracle baby that we had taken a break from trying. We weren't even technically trying at that point. Like, he's going to be fine. Like, of course, like, this is part of the story that I never saw coming, but he's going to be fine. And so they cut me open and do the C-section. And they had told me, what was it that they told me? Oh, they said that there might be a little extra something on the placenta. So I even like put the sheet down and was like, be sure that you check for that, and like saying stuff. And then when he came out, I did not hear him cry. And I knew that that was not a good sign, but I also was never going to give up. So I looked, and I remember it was like a male nurse or something. And I said, do not give up on him. I promise you, he's a miracle baby. Do not give up on him. Like, just because he's not crying right now. And they promised me they wouldn't. And they didn't. They actually did get, his heartbeat back and get him back. And so then my sister at that point had come up there, now we're now to March 6th.
She was probably busted down the door.
Oh yeah, she's 5 days postpartum.
Oh my
and
God.
She comes up there and works on him, which was so hard because it's her nephew. And I still kept thinking that everything was going to be okay. Like, once again, never pictured it going like this. Don't understand why it is, but like, he's going to be fine. And I didn't even know, I do like building and decorating and design. I do not know that much about medical, and I didn't realize how much, like, I think it's their blood pressure that has to do with it. And I think just, the trauma that he went through, even though a lot of 29 weekers make it, its situation was just different. And so we only got to have him for 10 hours. And part of me was so angry afterwards because 10 hours that we got to have him, I was on pain pills and all this stuff that is like fuzzy for me. And I don't know if that was being protected. But then I was angry because it was like, I can't even remember part of it. Like, some of it just seems so fuzzy that like, and that's all I got. And then like, I freaked out after, as we had to have a funeral and a service, and like, the worst thing ever is burying a child. And I freaked out the night before, and I was just like, I don't know that I remember what his hands look like. I don't know that I remember what his feet look like. And so I had to go up to the, whatever, the company that handles everything for you. And they were nice and they were so great. But then it's like, he's totally gone at that point. You know, it's been over a week. And it's so hard to like then look at him like that, because it's like, I will tell you, I held him when he passed. They let me do that. And I, at that point, thought, there is no way that this is actually happening. Like, he's not gonna die. Like, when they hand him to me, it's gonna be a miracle. Like, he's a miracle baby, and he's just gonna start breathing again, and he's gonna start, you know, his heart's gonna start back up, and then someday we're probably gonna go on the Today Show to tell this crazy story about how they didn't think there was hope. And like, I'm thinking all this, and I'm praying, I just keep going, please God, do a miracle. Please God, do a miracle. I've seen it over and over again. Everybody on both sides of the family are in there, and they in the NICU room, and they're all around in a circle, and everybody's praying, and here I am holding him. And then like the second that he passed, I knew, like, he looked different. Like, I'm a believer, and that's, you know, the most important thing to me. And when his soul was gone, I could tell, and I knew that he was in heaven. But I still just was like in disbelief that like that's how everything happened after all that we had been through. I was like, this was your plan, God? Like, you gave me that scripture, and you gave me, and he had given me the name Ezekiel, and it meant strength from God. And I was like, oh, this obviously means everything we've been through, this strength from God. Little did I know, now I think it meant you're going to need strength from God to go through what you're actually going to go through. And I did not know that at the time. So we had to have a service for him, and the doctor came in to me, and after he passed, I think it was either later that day or the next day, and he said, you know, I'm so sorry, Lindsey. I mean, he sat in there and cried with me. And then one of the things he said is, too bad your sister just had a baby, because she would be a really good surrogate for you. And is what you're going to have to do moving forward is use a surrogate. Like, your uterus, you can't carry. And then I just felt like another knife went in my heart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like everybody I know, you know, has a child that wants a child. And now we don't have any children, and now I can't even have children. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know how to, like, go about getting a surrogate. Like, I thought, like, this was my baby, and now, yes, we have a precious son in heaven, but, like, on earth, like, we still had a lot of time left to live. Like, we wanted to raise children so badly. And so
much to wrap your head around.
Oh, and I just couldn't even, like, I'm grieving, and I'm still in total shock. And then,
and, like, all the physical recovery from pregnancy alone, let alone what you went through.
Oh, I felt like I was being punished. Like, I can't even make it up. We get home. He says, you want to go home, don't you? And I was like, yes, I want to go home. And so we get to our house. Amazon delivers the crib and the mattress for the crib. As we're pulling up, they deliver my breast pump. And then on my birthday, which happened to be 4 days later, my breast milk came in. And I'm just like, you have all of this stuff. It's like the worst thing ever, because you have all of this happening, and you're grieving, and you're in so much pain. And I had, you know, this C-section scar, you know, they cut through your stomach. So I couldn't even get out of bed by myself. Like, my husband had to help me do everything. And I would be fine with doing all that. But when you're doing all of it without the baby, it felt like I was being punished. So I was angry for a while. And people were so sweet to try to put me in touch with people who had been through similar things. And there were a lot of people out there who had been through similar things. But no one's situation was the exact same as mine. And for some reason, that's what I was like so longing for. I was like, if I could just find one person that doesn't have any children and that can't carry or have any children, you know, like, I need their advice. Like, I need that one person that, like, and I remember I was mad, and I met with the sweetest people. And they, like I said, they had similar situations. They were a blessing to me, and it was so great to meet with them. And it did help. And talking to people on the phone, and, you know, talking to counselors, all of that helped. But for some reason, I thought, like, I have to find this one person. And one day, you know, through all my anger, because I had kind of grown up without really going through any tragedy looking back. Like, I had tons of great grandparents and, you know, lost them, but I had never really truly lost a relative or parent or sibling or, you know, any of that, thankfully. So I think I was kind of protected to that. And until you go through from that and until you go through something, there's no way to know what someone else that went through it felt like until you go through something like it or the same thing too. And so I just, you know, was so angry. And I think I had never been mad at God before, or even if you had been like disappointed, and I feel bad saying that still to this day, but like God knows what we're thinking anyways. And so I'd say, you know, God, like, I'm so mad at you. I'm so angry. Like, why did this happen? But I also know that I need you more than ever. And I'm like, can you just please, like, I need somebody that went through this too. Like, I need that. That would help me. And I feel like he truly said to me, you're turning to the wrong people. Turn to me. I lost my one and only son. Like, I gave my one and only son, and you need to turn to me, not them. And it was like eye-opening, and I was like, well, maybe that is. Maybe I'm searching in the wrong places and like looking for the wrong thing and trying to make sense of it myself instead of trusting him. And so for the first time in a long time at this point, that we're like in June, after losing him in March, I mean, I wouldn't go anywhere. I didn't want to see anyone. I got off of all social media. Every time I clicked on it, you know, or tried after that, the first picture that would come up was a baby, and then several after that. And I just, once again, felt like punishment. And so I would go, I finally got up the guts one day to go to Target, and I took a baseball cap with me everywhere, which I don't always usually wear hats, but I just felt like it almost became like a security blanket, because like I could like hide myself, or like hide like if I didn't want to see something. And I remember there, I'd never seen more babies at Target than that day. And I just thought I was gonna be strong enough to do it, and I couldn't, and I left bawling. And so all of these things had happened, you know, and it had been like, I think almost exactly 3 months. And I put on a brave face, and I showered and got ready, and I was gonna drive up to my parents' office, and I picked up lunch, and my youngest sister, who had just had the baby, you know, 5 days before Zeke, was there, and I hadn't even held her son yet. I couldn't do it. And I felt bad about that too. I felt guilty, like, how can I not? But I also was like, I literally can't. And she sat down next to me. I mean, my family, my husband's family, everybody was great, you know, checking on us all the time, neighbors bringing us things, friends everybody was excellent. But I was just, you know, hurting so bad. And she said, you know, that she had gone, we had the same OBGYN too, and she said that she had gone to see him that day. And I said, great, you know, and I'm kind of thinking like, I don't know that I want to be talking about this stuff. And she said, and I asked him when I could get pregnant again. And I'm thinking, man, like, this is really a heartless conversation. Like, why is she doing this to me? And she said, and he said November. And I was like, cool. Like, I was like, it's all I could muster. And she goes, and I asked him that because I want to carry your baby. And I said, oh my gosh, like, I was not expecting it at all. I had no idea. I honestly thought she was just being mean by talking about this. And she said, you know, I really feel like God put it on my heart. Every show I turn on, everything I do is about being a surrogate. I've done all my research. I've talked to my husband Cody about it. He's on board. And we want to do this. And she's like, I don't care how many times it takes. I don't care how long it is. Like, I want to carry your baby. I want you to have a baby here on earth too. And I just started bawling, and I was like in shock, and, you know, thanking her so much. And then part of me is still a little bit scared because of everything we've been through, and like, well, is this even going to work, you know? And, as I knew it was going to be a long journey no matter what, you know, and a lot of things would have to go right for it to happen. And I get in my car, and I'm like, because I had prayed on the way there for the first time in a long time, a prayer that just wasn't angry, like a little bit of a hopeful prayer on the way there. And then she gave me this news that I was not expecting at all. And it wasn't like I had prayed even for a surrogate. I was like, God, please just show me what you have for us, because I feel so lost. And then she told me that, and I get in the car, even before I call my husband, I said, okay, God, like, is this truly what you have for us? Is this what this means? And I turn on my stereo, and it was, I think, on K-Love or something, a Christian station, and the song that's playing was by Torrin Wells, and it said, he literally said, I just asked God that question. It said, this is my plan for you. I'm going to finish what I started. It's not over. I'm not done. And I just started bawling even more. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I do believe that God can speak to you in different ways, like, you know. And so I called my husband and told him, and we're both crying. And we said, you know, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. Like, because I didn't know anything. I knew one girl that had told me that she had a surrogate, but I didn't know what that meant or how she did it or what the thing was. And so, or how you even go about it. And so I was just like, had no idea. And so that was just a huge weight lifted that now we had this option. And I used to always pray like what I called silly prayers, like even like, oh God, if I could find a parking space, please. Or if I could, you know, get an A on this test or whatever. But I was just so not in a mood that I hadn't prayed even any of those in a long time. So the next day, having like a little bit of a new hope, I prayed that prayer as another silly prayer for the first time in a while. I was like, okay, God, like if really all of this works and it happens and like we are going to be able to have a baby with my sister carrying it. I know how much my husband was excited about having a boy. There were no boys on his side of the family since his brothers had been like 40 years. And you know, I was one of 3 girls, and he just was excited. We would have been happy with a baby no matter what. I don't want anyone to think otherwise. But it meant a lot to him to coach and just, we have a son, you know, and then he was in heaven. So it was kind of like those dreams that you had already dreamt because he was right there in my tummy, and these plans that you had made, then it was like they were ripped from you. And so I was like, if he could have that opportunity again, that would be amazing. I was like, and God, you know, since I picked the name Zeke, I really know that it's his turn to pick, but I really like the name Xander. If you could just make that happen. Okay, thanks, love you, amen, bye. You know, like, so then I drive to the gym, and ironically that night we had dinner reservations that was supposed to be, because I was supposed to be due on May 5th. And so we had made dinner reservations on June 6th at this restaurant that's like a fun restaurant and kind of hard to get into, and you had to make them on the first day of the month. And we thought that'll be our first night out as parents. My parents will come down and babysit, and we'll go eat dinner at this place. Well, as it was leading up to that, I was like, you know, I need to call and cancel this. Like, we don't have anything to celebrate. Well, then when my sister had told us that news the day before, we didn't cancel. We're like, we have something to celebrate now. Like, let's go and celebrate this new hope we have. We don't know what's going to happen for sure. And we're like cautiously optimistic, I would say. And so we go and eat dinner. And then afterwards, we stop by one more place and we're talking. And he goes, you know, let's say like all this works. And like, say we do get to have a baby here on earth, Lindsey. He's like, and what if it's a boy? You know, like, wouldn't that be so awesome? He goes, you know, I was on the elliptical today and this name came to me, and I just like literally like froze, and my eyes already filled up with water. And I was like, seriously, God? Because this seemed like a very quick answer to a prayer if he was going to say like what I thought he was going to say. And this lady sitting next to us was like, don't you make that poor girl cry. And I was like, oh, she has no idea. And he goes, I just really like the name Xander. And I was like, started full on bawling. He goes, I don't even know where I got it. Maybe it's because we saw Lion King in New York City when we were there a couple weeks ago. And I'm like thinking like, there's not even the name Xander in Lion King. I don't know where you got that. I was like, I know where you got it. I was like, I prayed to God that you would like that name literally earlier today. And that's him. So I felt like he was giving us like encouragement along the way. And so we had to go through, you know, all the fertility stuff again. It was the biggest faith walk. Like even the doctor that we went to, it was illegal in Oklahoma when we started the process, which still blows my mind. So we went to a doctor in Dallas. I've heard now, didn't know this at the time, that he was really hard to get into, that there was like a year or 2 waiting list. I just called and said, hey, we'll be there on August 6th because we're going to be at the lake August 5th and it's down the street. See you then. And they let me in. And so I know all of that was God, because people are like, it doesn't usually work that way. So he just kept opening the doors that needed to be opened. And then we did IVF, which we had done before and didn't work at all. And this time I'm like, okay, God, we're going to do this. I'm older now. My body's been through more. and we're gonna do all this and hope to get one when we didn't even before, but just, you know, kept praying and keeping the faith, and we got 4 eggs, and they had, which was less substantially than what we had before, because we had 12, and then they called it 100% fertilization, all 4 fertilized. And so we were super thankful for that, but then only 3 of them made it to the point to be tested. And when they tested them, they called me and they said, you know, 1 was not healthy, 1 was inconclusive, and then you have 1 healthy embryo. And I just started bawling, and they're like, and do you want to know the gender? I said, yes. Oh my gosh, yes, I forgot. I do want to know the gender too. And they said, you have a healthy baby boy embryo. And I just started bawling. I said, it's Xander. Oh my gosh, it's Xander. Like, it's happening. And I called my sister, and the first thing she said to me is, it's Xander. This is Xander. So we knew that it was Xander, but we also knew we still had a long way to go. So that's in November of 2019. And then, you know, everything got crazy in March of 2020. And that's exactly when we were supposed to do the transfer. And I remember for sure, because my birthday is March 10th, and it was that night, I'm pretty sure, that they sent everybody home from the Thunder game because of COVID. And so
that was a huge moment.
It was.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, okay, now we finally do have this healthy baby boy embryo, but like everything shut down, and like everyone was literally scared to do anything. So we're like praying again, like, what's the right timing? Because I felt like we had 1 shot. So it's like, we don't want to do it if it's dangerous. We don't want to do it if, you know, no one's going to be able to monitor. Like, what is really happening here? And no one really knew. And so she had, you know, all the doctors have said, like, when we did the checkups, because there was a lot leading up to it. I mean, we had to have contracts, we had to have attorneys, even though it was my sister. Wow. All of this stuff, and it wasn't even legal at that point, like I said. And so that's why we were going to Texas. But they had said, you know, your sister is such a great candidate for this. And of course we didn't know that. She was a saint, and God put it on her heart, and she was obedient. But we didn't know for sure, like, how everything looked on the inside. She had had 2 healthy pregnancies and babies. And by the way, she had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. So also even more of a saint. And
oh my God.
So she
I did not know that part.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
They all the doctors that did the checkouts and stuff were like, oh my gosh, like, this looks perfect. Like, she has a perfect uterus. She has, you know, so everything looks good. But for some reason, when we thought we were going to initially do the transfer in March, I don't think the way she was supposed to be ovulating or something wasn't right. I don't remember exactly what it was. And so that was a little discouraging, because it was like, wait, everything looked perfect. Everything's gone so great, you know? And so we just thought, okay, you know, but with everything's going on, this is probably a sign that now is not the right time. So we prayed about it, and we waited, and we're trusting God. We still had, you know, our embryo, and we still had this chance. And so then in June, they started trying again, and with her body, and she was taking all the shots, which I felt horrible that she had to do the shots twice, because they're not fun for anyone who knows that's going through them. I mean, used to, I couldn't even look when I was getting a flu shot, but now I can give myself a shot. Like, I mean, it's crazy. I can't even tell you how many I've had. But so I felt bad that she had to go through that process twice. She acted like, you know, she didn't mind at all, and I don't think she did, and it was very sweet of her. And her 2-year-old daughter would even pretend to give herself shots too, like, because she was watching. And so everybody was in it. And then in June, we were able to do the transfer, but because it was still COVID, I couldn't even go in with her. So my husband and I had to stay in the car, and she had to go in by herself, which I just felt so bad. I was like, I don't want you to have to go in by yourself. Like, you're already doing this huge favor, and then, like, all alone now. And so they had us FaceTime. And so the doctor was really sweet. He's funny, had a great personality. And when they tell you everything that's going on, you can see it all on a screen. Like, it's crazy. I mean, I feel like it's teeny tiny, but then it's magnified on the screen, and then it's in this syringe. And I'm like, oh my gosh, don't drop the syringe. Like, don't, like, accidentally push the button too fast. Like, what is this? Like, so, yeah. And they're all, like, so calm about it. But I'm like, do you understand we have 1 shot here? Like, literally 1 shot. I don't think my body has anything left. Like, financially, this is draining, like, everything. And so just praying. And when he does it, he goes, boom. And we were like, oh my gosh, that's a great sign, because my husband always said that, like when something went good at work, or like, you know, and so we're like, he just said that, like, and he didn't really seem like the type that would say that, like he was very, you know, professional and medical, and so we're like, wow, he just said that, okay. And so my sister, you know, we tried all the tricks after that too, like we take her home, we stay at the lake house. I'm like, don't touch anything, don't move, don't lift it. I will lift your children for you. Like, you know, trying to do all of that. Tried the pineapple, you're supposed to have pineapple. There's just all these little things that we were trying along the way. And so they wait, I think, I want to say like 10 days, maybe you can take a test in a week. But she had joined like every Facebook group and all these things to educate herself on it. And so she took a test pretty early on. I want to say it was like 5 or 6 days. And it showed that she was pregnant. And she took a test every day after that, even before we could go to the doctor. And they continued to get darker. And then she had, I mean, she's so laid back. She's amazing. The best pregnancy. And we would go over, I'd pick up her kids every Tuesday. We'd go to her house, straighten up, take the kids to dinner, and her and her husband did a date night every single Tuesday night, you know, just as one of the things to thank them, you know, different stuff like that all along the journey. It was super fun too, because we all got to we're already very close, but even closer.
It's like a village.
Yes.
Like raising kids as a village.
Yeah. And then, you know, her kids like know that she's pregnant, but then know it's my baby, which is a little bit hard to explain. And like her daughter loved telling people that too. It was a little awkward sometimes in stores.
Like, want people's reaction.
Yeah. She'd be like after Xander was born, spoiler alert, he's here and healthy and amazing, but we would go to the store, like, I mean, he was itty bitty and I'd be pushing him in a stroller and she'd be like, that's my cousin, but he used to be inside my mom. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to explain this now, Vivian, thank you for that intro. And I'd be like, I'm like, so I know you're just like getting my dressing room ready, but now I feel like I need to tell you why my child was inside my sister and he's actually mine. She didn't just give him to me. But so yes, so she had a great pregnancy. Faith walk, of course, like I said earlier, we were cautiously optimistic the whole time, praying all the time. So many people were praying. And then she went into labor a little early. She said she started the eviction process. And so she has a lot of tricks up her sleeve, but I was actually babysitting her kids that night. They were spending the night with my husband and I to kind of give her a break, because she was, you know, very pregnant. You couldn't even hardly tell because it's the way she carries her pregnancies. But, and she just nonchalantly texted me, are you awake? And I was like about to fall asleep and I called her and I was like, yeah, I'm awake. What do you mean? Like, why are you texting? Are you in labor? And she's like, yeah, I think I might be. I was in the bath and, you know, my contractions are getting closer, because you can have them, you know, weeks before. She's like, so I think I might be in labor. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I had Xander's bag mostly packed. Like, I'm very organized type A, but like, I also was a little worried about like, for lack of a better word, jinxing things. Like, I didn't want to do things too. It took me a long time to actually finish the nursery that I had started for Zeke, to finish it for Xander, because it sat like that for so long. And, you know, the snoo that we had and like all of the things that we had for Zeke, it was like bittersweet that we're getting to use them for Xander, but I was like worried to do anything too soon because I didn't want to be heartbroken again. And so I wasn't exactly ready, didn't even have a car seat. So I'm like, okay, I mean, it was ordered, it just wasn't there yet. So I'm like, Matt, wake up. Don't wake up her kids yet, but you need to pack. He's like, what is happening? He's way more dramatic than me. He's like,
you guys were probably like a little gun shy after like what
yes.
happened last time. You're like, okay,
and he's so nervous. He's like, is it too soon? Is it okay? Is it, you know, and I'm like,
yeah.
yes, it's okay. But like, let's try to not wake them up. You need to pack a bag. And I had stuff like laid out, but not packed. Xander's was mostly done. So I'm like trying to act calm, but like frantically getting everything and trying to think of everything. I'm like, we don't even have a car seat. So we get her kids in the car, get the bags in the car. I call her on the way. She says, you know, we're going to drop her kids off, give them to her husband, pick her up to take her to the hospital. And then she's also going to bring a car seat for us, an extra car seat she had. So we do all that. And it's still, we're kind of like, she's pretty sure she's in labor. She's done this before, but we're not 100% sure. We might go when everybody come home too, you know, like it's not time yet. But we go and, it at first, because mind you, this is still right after, I mean, it's still COVID. This is January of 2021 now. I mean, this has been a long process, all of it. And we, at the time too, like we were thinking of potential like birthdays, and we didn't even realize that, because this was early, that his birthday turned out to be, or is 12321. It's the same forward and backwards as palindrome, which is turned out to be a really cool birthday.
Oh my
And
God. Again, meant to be. Like, little things like that just make you like give you chills. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
So we were like, oh, this is actually a really cool day. I hope you do have them today. And so, which that was like, we knew it was probably gonna be the next day, because at this point, you know, we're close to midnight and potentially even longer, because you never know how long you're gonna be in labor. And so we get in there, and at first they weren't gonna let my husband in because of COVID protocol still. And then I'm like not taking no for an answer. I'm like, you don't understand. The last time we were here, no offense to you guys, but it was horrible. We lost our son. I'm like, oh gosh, we remember you guys. I'm like, please just get your boss. Like, I'm pretty sure like it's fine for him to go in there and hopefully like have a good experience this time. Not that that was your all's fault, but like we need this, and he needs to be in there for it. Like, he's the dad, even though it's my sister and me.
That feeling.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
So, I mean, because it was a little different too, because, you know, they were allowing which typically is the mom and the dad in, but then they were letting my sister in, who has our child. I'm like, but he is the dad, you know, but they're letting me in, who's technically the mom. And so, but they wouldn't let our mom in. So she had to, my parents rushed and drove back from the lake, because nobody thought it was coming this early, and my mom was sitting in the parking lot waiting.
How many weeks was it again?
I think, so she was, I think, between 37 and 38.
Okay.
So I think that they would have probably induced her at 38, because her children, her husband's a very big guy, but her children were not as big as they were projecting Xander to be. So there was a little bit, you know, and then after everything we had been through too, they're like, let's just get him out safely. Let's not push it, you know, but we want it also not be too early. So sure enough, she was in labor. They broke her water, you know, everything progressed pretty quickly. But even then, you know, it's all going well. You still are scared. I mean, my husband was so scared. He stood in the corner just praying, and like almost couldn't even like be part of it. Like, he was, but he was just like terrified because of what we had been through. And I'm also, you know, worried about my sister. I'm like, please God, just like let her be okay, because there's always chances that things can happen. And I'm like, I cannot imagine, I don't know that I could live with myself if anything happened to her and this baby. Like, please. So we're all praying. Everybody at home is praying, and everybody knows, you know, at this point he's about to be born. And still, when he came out, I mean, watching back, these sweet nurses who my sister had worked with for years, because after that, she actually did not go, after we lost Zeke, she did not go back to the NICU because it was too hard for her for probably 3 or 4 years.
Your sister didn't.
She didn't go back to work there because it was too hard. I mean, so after we had Xander, she was able to eventually go back. But so leading up to that, she delivered him, and I actually got to help a little bit. It felt like such a long time before hearing him cry in the moment, I think because I was so nervous and I knew that that's what I needed to hear. And like now, and I'm sure I've done it since, but anyone that complains about crying, it's actually the most beautiful sound in the world. Like, it's like, I was like, my husband and I felt such a relief, and my sister. And I think every nurse in the room, because all of my sister's nursing friends, we weren't allowed to have like a birth photographer or anyone else in there, but they came in and they used our phones and they videoed and they took pictures, and it was such a special moment because so many of them were there the night that we had lost Zeke. And then it was like kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, going full circle and healing. And like, this was, you know, such a great experience. And they were able to capture all of it. And there's some of the most amazing pictures. And we did hear him cry. When you watch the video back, it's like it was really quick, but in the moment it felt like eternity. And it was the best noise ever. And then like, you know, after I just like collapse on my sister and like thank her, and we're crying. And my husband's crying in the corner because he's afraid to look at anything. We're like, you can't see anything, like it's fine. And then when It was so
I
funny.
didn't even think about
Someone
that.
actually commented, the pictures got posted on Facebook, and someone actually that didn't know the story clearly commented, and they're like, why is the man crying in the corner? And we're like, it's the dad, and if you knew the story, you would know why. And I guess it just looked funny. So,
It probably looks so bizarre.
yeah, it's just like, I'm laying on my sister crying, here's this precious baby, which is all that's kind of confusing too, and then there's this one man in the corner going,
But this is how it happens.
yeah, this is the real life. Yeah. And then
Oh, man.
something that I was still like, I'd always talked to him, and like genetically and biologically, it's our son, but my sister carried him, and we've always kind of still, like mentioned that. So I don't know that it'll ever be like a big conversation, but I didn't really like worry about the bonding because I knew like it would happen when it's supposed to. But I will say I was so amazed when they gave him to me, right away. That wasn't what I was amazed about, but I sat down and held him, and it was like he instantly knew that I was his mom, even though I didn't carry him. He literally like was early, and most newborns, even if they're full term, can't do this. He pushed back on my chest and looked up at me and just looked at me with his big eyes and was like, you're my mom. And I could just feel it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he knows. Like, he knows that even though he wasn't inside of me, that I am his mom. And so it was just an amazing moment. And then like so many other things. So I feel like going through something like that, it's great to like pick like a Bible verse or scripture or something that can help you like keep the hope. And so we had always said that ours from the moment we lost Zeke was going to be Jeremiah 29:11. And it's, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And that was the hope that we clung to. Well, on my YouVersion app, guess what the verse was for that day that Xander was born? 1, 2, 3, 2, 1 was Jeremiah 29:11. And then we go in the room, and it's funny too because they gave my sister a room, and then my mom got to come in as her guest, and then Matt and I had a room, kind of like that I had the baby, and then Xander was with us. And then the episode of Friends that was playing right when I turned on TV was when Phoebe was a surrogate for her brother, and I was like, how ironic! My sister was just our surrogate, And so there's just all these little, God winks that happened along the way through the whole journey. And so it was amazing. So that's where we are today. I have a precious 4-year-old boy, Zeke, in heaven. And then I have a very precious yet also very ornery 2-year-old Xander here on earth that I still wake up every morning and thank God. And when I look at him, think, oh my gosh, it worked. Because it's truly a miracle.
Were medical doctors helpful or unhelpful during your journey? What was your experience with that?
I would say overall definitely helpful. I think that, God put it on their heart to follow that career path, and I think that takes a special person. And, some of them even shared their stories like they wanted to do it because it created life and they had seen a lot of death throughout their life, and this, was hopeful for them, things like that. But I will say, I think it's important to find the right doctor for you because we have, talked to, visited, gone to so many different doctors. And I think there's some doctors out there that help a lot of women get pregnant, but they just kind of follow the same protocol every time. And lots of times that works because maybe that woman would have gotten pregnant after a little bit of time anyways, or all she needed was the IUI or the IVF. But then a lot of women also have more intricate things that are going on with their body, and they need them to go a little bit deeper and find out, because I feel like every person is different. And so when you just follow that broad protocol, yeah, it's going to work a lot of the time. But getting someone pregnant and then them actually having a baby, I've learned can be two very different things. And some people have no problem getting pregnant, but then they have several miscarriages, which can be very painful. And I feel like after just a couple, you should probably do, or your doctor, or switch doctors to do more research so that you don't have to keep going through that emotionally and physically. Of course, you don't want to stop trying, but I think sometimes, another set of eyes or somebody that does more research or has the capabilities to, do more testing than some facilities. So I think that if it's taking longer And, if you've had miscarriages, I would always get a second opinion or maybe try a different doctor and have them do the testing and see what's actually causing your infertility, whether it be on your side or your husband's or something genetic, so that you can try to help, expedite the process, for lack of a better word, and minimize the hurt and pain of, miscarriages and loss and time for your body and stuff you're putting your body through. And I will say too, acupuncture, I really believe in. And people had told me that, and it was one of the last things I tried. And then looking back, I was like, why did I wait so long to try that? Because it's probably the least expensive of all of the infertility stuff. And I had just started going to an acupuncturist who was excellent. And then I found out I was pregnant with Zeke. And so I feel like it really helped with that.
Wow.
I went to him when we did IVF to get Xander, and I also sent my sister to him. So, and a lot of other people that I've talked to about it kind of feel the same way, but for some reason, I also get the impression, and I was one of them, that it's a lot of women's last resort, and I feel like it could save you potentially a lot of money if people would maybe start doing that sooner. So, just my little...
keep an open mind towards it.
Yeah, and just do it along with the other stuff, too.
Yeah.
It can't hurt.
Exactly. I need to get that person's name from you because
Yeah.
I need it for my own reasons.
Yeah.
So tell me, when did you start choosing to tell people in your life about this journey, and how did you come to that decision of letting people in?
I think we pretty much did right away. Like I said, I didn't know at the time anyone that had struggled with it, and so our family knew, just because we had met each other later in life, and they knew we both wanted to be parents, that I think they always knew that we were trying. And I'm pretty much an open book. And the way we looked at it as, we talked to our families about everything anyways, and my sisters and mom and parents are my best friends. And so we always talk, but also the prayer warriors. I feel like for me, I know some people are different and they want it to be more private, but I wanted more prayer warriors praying for our situation. I wanted the support. And so we always talked about it. And then talking about it, they would tell us about other people who had been through similar things or friends that they knew. And then that allowed us to, meet them and have conversations that were also helpful, to just have somebody that kind of knew about it. Because though our family was supportive, none of them had really been through it. So that helped, but they knew people who had. So we always did, I think.
Yeah, so you definitely told your family pretty early on, but what about friends and periphery people? Was it kind of the same thing, or?
Well, and it's so weird the way it works. So our friends knew, and I think some people ask how it's going, and then some people are kind of afraid to, because they worry if it's a sensitive subject. And so, and sometimes it can be one of those things, the more people you tell, then the more people you're having to update. And sometimes those can be happy updates, but when they're painful updates, it's like reliving and telling that story over and over again. And that can be hard too. But, the cool part is there'd just be situations, where you run into someone you hadn't seen in a while, and somehow it would come up and they had gone through a similar thing, or they would say, we tried for so many years too, and then we got pregnant from IVF, or this is the doctor that we went to, and it may be the same doctor. So there were all those little kind of God winks along the way too, of people that I would have probably never asked or thought to, but it just, when you're going through it, somehow it comes up in conversation, and then they had similar stories or helpful hints, or this is what I did that worked for me, or here's this doctor's number. So I thought that was important in sharing, because if you don't say anything, sometimes you won't ever get that information.
Right, the community aspects
Yeah.
of it. Yeah. Okay, so how is your relationship and marriage impacted by this? I know you've touched on it, but let us know a little bit more about that.
Personally, and I know not necessarily everybody's a believer, but I feel like to go through everything we went through, and really, in my opinion, it's important to be equally yoked to go before you even start the process, because it is a lot. It is very financially draining, it's very emotionally draining, it's mentally draining, and it's physically draining on your body. And so I think if you don't have that foundation of faith and know we're in this together and we're trusting God with this, if you feel like you're carrying all that weight on your own, I don't think that that's healthy, and you need to be your healthiest and your least stressed. So I feel like it really helped that we were equally yoked going into it. And then honestly, that so helped with when we lost our son, Zeke. I think, unfortunately, a lot of marriages don't survive the loss of a child, and we drew closer to each other after that. I mean, I feel like I did have a little bit of the fear of sudden death. That's like something you can have when you're grieving. So I was like so afraid I was going to lose Matt too, or like my parents or a sister. And so like I wanted to be close to everybody and just always know they were okay. But we got really even closer after that. And I know that's not always the case, but I think a lot of that had to do with our faith. And then, of course, you know, there's other times too going through the process where you're going to get upset and you're going to get mad and you're going to get frustrated. And, you know, I'd be like, it's Saturday morning and the guy has to go give their sample first. So I would get to sleep in a little bit on the IUI days. And I swear they did always happen on a Saturday. And like we would have something the night before. And so he would have to wake up super early to go do you know what. And then I would sleep in and he'd come back and get me and then take me to the appointment. And so, you know, there's just always things that he's like, he has a funny story. He was like, today was a horrible day. I knew I had to be there early, and we had that neighborhood party last night, and so I stopped to get a coffee, and then when I was trying to put the DVD in, because they have these stations for men, I don't want to go into too much detail, he's like, but the DVD player malfunctioned, and it spilled my coffee everywhere, and then it was all, he's like, so it took forever, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like, so there's definitely the frustrating times, but I would say overall, I think because of our faith, we were able to get through that. All of
stay
it.
like together and
Yes.
step and sing.
And he was very good about being supportive and going to every appointment with me. And I think that also helped a lot too, because I think I felt guilty for a while that my body had failed Zeke, or it was my fault that we weren't getting pregnant. But he was always supportive and didn't make me feel that way.
Yeah, you guys have a bond that is very like evident. Like it's just like when you guys are together and like telling your story or just chatting with people, like it's very obvious. So
yes.
I wanted to throw that in there for anybody who doesn't know.
Thank you.
Guys. So tell us a little bit about what would you say is the hardest moment of all this? I mean, maybe it's obvious, but maybe it's not. So
yeah, I mean, the obvious one is losing our son Zeke. But I would say the other hard moment and moments going through it is the timing. You know, like we've talked about, like you make plans and God might kind of laugh at it and he has his own timing. And sometimes it's so hard to trust his timing, even though he showed us over and over again that his timing is best and that's the way it's going to be. And we appreciate it when it happens. You get caught up in the moment. And I think that even the enemy can try to attack you and be like, well, you're only getting older. And, you know, are you sure your eggs aren't totally rotting and your biological clock is ticking, and you start thinking all these things and you can spiral. And so I think it's important to try to just do what you can do and take it one day at a time. I don't think you can sit at home and do nothing, but I think you can, stress is probably the worst thing for it. And time is one of the hardest things because you feel like you're running out of time instead of just trusting God's time.
Great answer. Did anyone say anything that was hurtful that stuck with you? And I only ask this to help people understand what is helpful and what is unhelpful to say to someone.
I don't feel like anyone said anything that was hurtful. I think some people are leery to say anything at all. And after going through losses and hard things recently in life, I feel like I've learned, and I didn't know this before, and I was probably guilty of it, I think it's better to say something than nothing at all, because at least, even if you say the wrong thing, at least they know that you care and that you're thinking about them. And I think that one common misconception is that people, if they know you're trying and you're having a hard time getting pregnant, that they are worried about like telling you if they're pregnant, or should we ask her if she wants to be a host on this other friend's baby shower, or, you know, do we invite her to do this because she doesn't have kids, so that might be hard on her. We know they're trying. And I will just say, for me personally, and I feel like it's this way for a lot of other people that I've talked to who have gone through similar things, it's better to invite them. It's better to invite them to be a host. It's better to maybe even tell them first when you're pregnant, not last, because it can feel like you're being left out. And it was never one of those things for me and anyone else that I talked to that I was jealous or not happy for the people that were getting pregnant easily or after trying and having the showers and having the babies. It was just a frustration between, you know, me and God, like, why not me too, God? Like, I'm not happy for them, but I just want it so bad for myself too. So it's like, I was never not happy for them or never jealous of them. You want that for that person too. You just want it for yourself as well. And I think that's a misconception. Like, you have to walk on eggshells or you can't tell them, you know, these things, but that's not true.
That is such great advice. I feel like that's going to help family members and loved ones like better support people. So how can a friend or family member best support? Like, what are positive things that they can be doing to make someone feel supported?
I think just ask them what they need, because some people are different. Some people are maybe more private, and I've had friends like that, and they don't necessarily talk about it as much. And so you may ask them, and they may say, "I'll let you know," and then you can say, "Okay, well, I'll be praying for you in the meantime. Please let me know anything I can do." But I think definitely pray for them, because I think the more prayers, the better. And then I would say, you know, is there anything specific that I can do? Like, if their husband travels, offer to go to the doctor's appointments with them if that's something you can do, because that way they don't have to go alone. Like, in the beginning, I couldn't give myself all the shots I needed to give them. So I give myself, like, and so if my husband was out of town, I'd either have my sister do it or a neighbor, you know, that's in the medical field do it. And so that's something you can do. I mean, now I can give myself a shot or give someone else a shot because I've learned how to do it after much practice. But there's just different things like that. And I think just asking the person, because each individual is unique and like has different things that would mean a lot to them. I mean, some people might just say, let's go to a movie and I don't want to talk about it and think about it. I want to just not talk so that I'm not stressed about it. So I think just communicating and seeing what they need from you.
Yes, people do get afraid and like paralyzed to like make the wrong move. So I think that's great advice. What advice do you have for women who are going through this process right now, who are in the thick of it?
I would say don't give up. I would say don't get discouraged. Our process and journey was long. It was 6 years or so, and some people's is even longer, some is much shorter. But I feel like if God puts it on your heart that you want to be a mom and a parent, I don't think he would do that unless he intends for that to happen some way and somehow and someday. So I don't think, God loves us and he wants the best for us. So if he gives you that desire, unless later in life that desire changes, I think where there's a will, there's a way. And like I said earlier, if you need to change doctors and go to different doctors, or maybe you're going to adopt, or maybe you need to have a surrogate, or maybe, but I just think, you know, if you're like, well, I've always wanted to be a mom, but didn't happen naturally. Well, God also gave these doctors these talents and medicine and science that can help you get pregnant from just trying naturally. So until you exhaust all of those and all the different avenues, and like I said, it might be adoption or it might be a surrogate, I would not give up. Where there's a will, there's a way. It can be hard, and sometimes you want to, and sometimes you need a break. I mean, my husband and I would take breaks from time to time, and we put in a swimming pool at one point. We said, we're taking a break from fertility, and we're putting in a swimming pool, and we're not thinking about it, and then we got pregnant. And so it's like, just sometimes that's fine to take a break, but still know, like, we're going to come back to it. We don't know what's going to happen, but, you know, we will find out at some point how and when we're going to have a baby. We're not giving up, but you can take a break if you need to.
But what are some practical things that they can do or mindsets to take on when they are having to trust God? I can tell them to trust God, and, you know, you guys have faith. What are some practical things that they can do whenever they don't trust God, to at least be obedient in the thick of it?
That's a great question, because it's easier said than done, I think, for sure. And so I think one of the things that you can do is take it one day at a time. I think I have friends that even in other situations, you know, going through divorces or breakup, they'll think so far into the future about like worst case scenario. What if this happens? What if this happens? And it's like, you can't do that. You can't think, well, what if it's been 5 years and at this point you're only a year into it? So you have to take it one day at a time. For many reasons, for your sanity, and because the stress of like overthinking it and not trusting God's timing is not good for you either. And then I think everybody's journey is different, so you have to know what's best for you. Like I've had friends go, so I mean, we're trying, so I just can't have any wine. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but if you love wine, or if we're trying, so I don't want to go to my workout classes anymore because I'm afraid that might not be good. I am not a doctor, but I think the opposite of that. I think if not having the glass of wine you want to have is going to stress you out, have the wine, because the stress is worse. If not going to a workout class and having the stress release that you get from going is going to stress you out, go to the class. I mean, do you know how many people, work out their whole pregnancy? And so I think, just taking it one day at a time, knowing you and your body and your and your husband's relationship, if you guys need to take a break, if you need to drink the wine, if you want to go run, if you want to scream, if you want to go break something, they have places you can literally go do that now. Like, do whatever works best for you, because no one's situation is exactly the same. And know that, like, it can be frustrating and you can get frustrated with God. And I always used to think, oh my gosh, I can never say, God, I'm mad at you. But after we lost my son, I said it and I screamed it. And then I was like, he knew anyways. He knows what we're thinking. Like, what good is it to be like, oh, I'm not going to say that. That would be bad. Like, he already knows. So be real with him. Talk to him. Tell him. Say, God, I'm so upset right now and I'm trying to trust you, but I'm having a really hard time with it. Like, what do I need to do? Show me, open the doors you want open. And then, go do what you need to do until he shows you.
How frustrating is it to be in a relationship with someone that won't be truthful with their feelings?
Oh,
So
I know.
true.
That is frustrating. It's like, be real. Like,
Yeah.
no one's like, oh, it's fine, or like, I'm okay. Like, I would
God doesn't
just
want that
cry
from us.
sometimes and be like, Mom, it's not that I'm not happy for my sister. It's that, I'm sad. And she's like, I know, I hate it too. And she'd cry with me, like, it's okay to be that way. And to just take a break if you need it, or sometimes you and your husband may fight, but then at the end of the day you're on the same team and you both want the same thing, and you can recognize that was just the stress that made us feel that way, or we've been through a lot, or that was super disappointing news that we got, but it's okay to feel those emotions and go to those places and then come back when you're ready to. So
Real quick, because we kind of ended off last time with this, do you want to leave a little message for both Zeke and for Xander in case they watch this, hear this?
Well, I would say, Zeke, as I tell you every day, I cannot wait to be with you again in heaven. And I'm so thankful that I got to feel what it felt like to be pregnant. And I loved being pregnant. And I know that was a blessing, because not every woman gets to feel that. And some people, they have different journeys, but I know that it was so cool that I got to experience that, and that's something I'm forever grateful for. And I can't wait to see you again and hold you. And I'm thankful my dad recently went there to be with him, and so I know they're there together. And so I'm excited to be reunited with them, and I am so thankful for that hope that I have, that I know that I will be because of Jesus. And I want him to look out for his brother always, and we talk about him all the time to Xander, and Xander calls him his brother and will kiss his picture. And I love that even though it's not the relationship that you think that your two children are going to have, that they will always have a special relationship. And I just pray that Xander hears, and we already talk about it. And like I said, it's probably not going to be one of those things where we set him down and say, when you were born, your aunt was actually carrying you, because we've made comments along the way and kind of talked about things. So it'll probably just be a gradual thing, but I pray and hope that and I know that he will realize what a special blessing that he is and what a miracle he is, and that he uses his life, because God obviously wanted him here for a reason, to touch others. And that, I know he and my sister will have a special bond from that. And I just pray that he really knows, because everybody is a miracle. All children and childbirth and everything, that is a miracle. And I think sometimes we can take that for granted. So I think hopefully him knowing his story as he grows up gives him an even extra inspiration and push to want to do something really special and help others with his life too.
You will.